Hey everybody, it's Atheists for the Cause, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Saudi Arabia, LeBron James, and give an update on the Wall fundraiser. So let's have a look. Saudi Arabia, UAE sends troops to support Kurds in Syria. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is because Trump has decided to withdraw from Syria, and my position on that, similar to a lot of you, but maybe slightly different, is I actually wouldn't mind being in Syria to grow the influence, but I feel like if we're gonna be there, we have to be there 100%. We can't be a half-ass in it. And clearly, or what seems clear to me anyways, is that the United States was not willing to completely commit to Syria. We were going to try to be there and offer a little bit of support here and there, but we weren't going to accomplish anything major. So if we're not going to accomplish anything major, then why spend billions of dollars being there? And, why be stuck in Syria for years and years, maybe even a decade or more? And especially with the threat of, even though Russia and, their allies are fighting ISIS, which is a common enemy to us, there's still plenty of room there to have some sort of accident that, becomes a global conflict. Now, that is worth, that risk is worth it if you're trying to accomplish something major. But if you're not trying to accomplish anything, what's the point? There's risking global conflict isn't worth it then. So, anyways, let's continue with this article. I love this article because it's nice and short. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have sent military forces to areas controlled by the Kurdish YPG group in northeast Syria, Turkey's Yeni Safak newspaper reported. The paper said the forces will be stationed with U.S.-led coalition troops and will support its tasks with huge military enforcements as well as heavy and light weapons. Quoting the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the newspaper reported that a convoy of troops belonging to an Arab Gulf state recently arrived in the contact area between the Kurdish PKK, YPG, and Daesh in the Deir ez-Zor countryside. This comes at a time when Ankara is preparing to launch an expanded military operation with the Free Syrian Army against the Kurdish PKK group in the northeast of Syria. Saudi and Emirati military advisors have in recent months met with officials of the Kurdistan Democratic Party KDP and Kurdistan Workers' Party PKK, considered by Turkey as terrorist organizations, at the U.S. base in northeast Syria. There are fears of Arab-Turkish confrontations that will be the first of their kind on Syrian soil. So, what this is really telling us is that one of the criticisms of getting out of Syria is that the Kurds will be left, who've been our allies in a lot of these conflicts, will be left to be slaughtered because they're a minority and even though they fight well, their numbers are just so small they can be overrun. And if Saudi Arabia is willing and the UAE are willing to stand by them and protect them, then that's not going to happen. You know, Russia's not going to go after the Kurds that hard with the UAE and Saudi Arabia protecting them. So, and it's really Syria that hates the Turks more, and I mean the Syrian government and the Turkish government. So, um, the Turkish government, from what I've always understood, hate the Kurds more than anybody because that's where the Kurds really come from, and Turkey has like kicked out the Kurds basically. Um, so here you have it, and I don't think it's a fair criticism to say that the Kurds will be slaughtered in Syria anymore. Anyways, let's move on to LeBron James because he criticized NFL ownership and commends Adam Silver, who is the NBA commissioner. And, you know, it really bothers me what LeBron James is saying here, and you'll see why in a second. LA Lakers star LeBron James was critical of NFL owners during the latest episode of HBO's The Shop on Friday night, saying they have a slave mentality. I mean, there are a lot of black people that use slavery that never impacted them personally, directly, um, to as a benefit. Like you could say that some people have been negatively affected by slavery, but LeBron James isn't that guy. Um, he's making millions and millions. He's extremely athletic, and some people would say that the athleticism of black people in the United States has stemmed partially from like an effective type of eugenics that happened because slave owners wanted to have the strongest, fittest people, and so they would pick, the strongest and bring them to the United States, and that effectively caused black people to be extremely, to have extremely good physical abilities in the United States, genetics. And I'm not, you know, I don't know if there's science behind that, but I would say that it seems to be, you know, probable that happened. I mean, if you just look at, say, not that black people are dogs or anything like that. I'm not comparing the two, but the situation of when like hunters pick dogs and uh, it's the same sort of process. And so hunters would go and they'll like pick the strongest out of the litter, the biggest, the one with the best genes, the purest. They didn't. Hunters don't go and pick the runt. So, and there's actually quite a bit that goes into that. So, um, there's a good chance that actually LeBron James personally benefited his, and partially got his career due to slavery, if you want to go back that far. But really, I mean, slavery was long ago enough that slavery really doesn't impact people of today. It if you civil rights had more of an impact of people today, but slavery itself didn't. And so, if you're gonna say something like the slave mentality, you've got to define what you mean by that. But anyways, he goes, in the NFL, they got a bunch of old white men owning teams, and they got that slave mentality. James said during the episode, and it's like, this is my team. You do what the fuck I tell y'all to do, or we get rid of y'all. Now, that's kind of ironic coming from LeBron James. This is a guy who demands to the owners that they pay him all kinds of money, and then he leaves them like a year later to get all kinds of more money from another team. LeBron James has skipped from team to team to team. So does that mean LeBron James has a slave mentality? But in the NFL, there's a salary. It's a lot different than the NBA. There's a salary cap, and there are contracts, and players are actually held to the contracts, but so are teams. Um, because because of the salary cap, teams have to be held to their contracts. So basically, the way it works is the structure of the contract is any money that gets paid to the player has to count against the salary cap. That means if the player leaves, then that money that was already paid that didn't go against the cap will have to go against the cap. So there are different ways of structuring the contract where, say, there's something called the signing bonus, and say I want to pay a player $5 million over 5 years, but I want to give them that money right up front. So it counts $1 million against the salary cap every year for 5 years, but uh, the player gets 5 million right away and then zero every other year. And so say I cut him. So we signed this contract and I cut him in the second year. Well, he still got $5 million, and only 1 million counted against the salary cap. So the other 4 million has to count against the salary cap next year. So the NFL holds their teams to their contracts more than any other league. And by the way, no contract, just to be clear, no contract would be just a signing bonus. There's a base salary, which is how much a player makes every game. It's called their game check. There is a roster bonus. Some teams use it, some teams don't. But if you make the 53-man roster, you get the money. There is a there are all these bonuses for making the Pro Bowl or other types of incentives like that. There's what's called a workout bonus. I know this contracts extensively. I've been following them for years, but workout bonus is in the off season. Uh, you don't actually have to go. A player doesn't actually have to go to the workout. They're voluntary. So certain teams want all their players to come to entice them. They put workout bonuses in the contract that the player gets if they go work out with the team and doesn't if they stay home and work out somewhere else. So, and that actually benefits the player, by the way, because if a player gets hurt outside of the team, then while working out, then they don't get like their money basically. Because if you're put on injured reserve or something like that, you'll uh, you'll still get your money, but you have to be actually injured like during a game or at a team facility for that to kick in. If you're hurt outside of a team facility, you can be what's put on a non-football related injury and list, and then you basically get screwed that way. But so the NFL holds their teams quite a bit accountable, and it's not true that like the owners are just old white men either. By the way, there's in the NFL there are very few teams that are owned by just one owner, and you know I think that's true with Dallas Cowboys. Only Jerry Jones owns it, but most teams have multiple owners because teams are worth like billions of dollars. So, and then you have the Green Bay Packers who are they have like hundreds of thousands of owners. So like the average person is an owner. Literally, they sell stocks, and the the last stock sale was like $250 a share. And if you own a share, you're an owner. I've actually been to an owners meeting, which is pretty cool. The players are who make the ship go. We make it go every Sunday without Todd Gurley and without Odell Beckham Jr. Without those players, those guys, there's no football. And it's the same in the NBA. Okay, well, how about if there's no commissioner, if there's no uh, you know, for the teams, if there's no front office, if there's nobody, running the teams, there's no coaches. Like, that's a very shallow perspective. All of the aspects are needed. Like, a lot of people don't realize how much a head coach does. They've got to like they're the ones who are responsible for booking plane tickets and hotels and all the things like that. I'm a Packers fan myself, and I've read articles about, and like James Jones, who used to play for the Packers, he was a wide receiver. He was talking about how, like, if the Packers lost a couple of away games, then Mike McCarthy would actually um, uh, like put them in a worse hotel the next game. And he said, like, if you want to win, or if you want to be in a nice hotel, then win on the road. And so they would just get in worse and worse hotels until basically they're in a Super 8, and they decide to finally win a game. So there's a lot that goes into coaching and the front office that people don't even realize. It says the difference between the NBA and the NFL. The NBA is what we believe a player, can be. The potential, James said. In the NFL, it's like, what can you do for me this Sunday or this Monday or this Thursday? And if you ain't it, we're moving on. Well, it's actually the same way in the NBA. If you can't help your team, the team's gonna move on. Um, I mean, I guess to some extent it becomes flipped though, because the players have way too much power. And actually, what LeBron James does is he illegally tampers, but the commissioner won't enforce tampering. And there's a lot of articles on that if you want to look it up. But basically, he says, oh, this player should come to our team, that player should come to our team. And he does it publicly. And any player who publicly advocates for another player to come on to their team and be traded for or whatever is guilty of tampering. So, James breaks the rules uh, of his own league, or the league he's in, and they just let him get away with it basically because he's such a superstar, and that's how the NBA operates. And I think, uh, LeBron James is seeing it through the eyes of a superstar. I bet if you ask some of the NBA guys who aren't superstars, it's a lot different. Because all of the money goes to a very small portion of players in the NBA, and the money is much more spread out in the NFL. Because there is a solid minimum salary in the NFL, and that goes up every year. Well, not every year, but there are like tiers, depending on how long you've been in the NFL. So, like, for a veteran, the minimum is like many hundreds of thousands of dollars, or maybe even over a million. I can't quite remember right now, but it's a lot of money. And so there's completely different structures. I don't think LeBron James understands the different structures between the NFL and the NBA. And he hasn't really established, from this article anyway, there's no comment here that establishes anything about the NFL having a slave mentality. Apparently it's apparently it's being a slave to for both sides to agree to a contract, and then both sides actually be held to that contract. Um, and I've got news for LeBron James, by the way. Slaves didn't have a choice to get paid. They didn't have a choice to negotiate and sign contracts, especially for millions of dollars. But then it says, added Gurley, that what I say, your best ability is availability. It's really week to week. It ain't no year by year. Well, I, I mean, you're there to win games. That's what it's all about, winning games. What do they expect? The shop is a 30-minute show set in a barber shop where athletes and yeah, none of this other stuff matters. Okay, I'm so appreciative in our league of our commissioner, James said. Yeah, because he lets you break the rules, and he gives you a pass because you're a superstar. He doesn't mind us having a real feeling and to be able to express that. I guarantee if someone went out and expressed a pro-Nazi sentiment, the NBA would come down on them harshly. What they do is they allow statements for, uh, you know, for statements that they agree with, they allow those, but statements that they don't agree with, they're gonna come down on. It doesn't even matter if Adam agrees with what we are saying. Okay, so you could go out and give a pro-Nazi statement. You could just, put a big swastika out there, right? I'm sure the NBA would be just fine with that. No. He at least wants to hear us out, as long as we are doing it in a very educational, non-violent way. Oh, so there are limitations, huh? Then he's absolutely okay with it. James and Carter are executive producers of The Shop, which debuted this year. Uh, a little information for LeBron James as well is that the NFL also allows players to fight for causes, and I mean there's a week dedicated to special causes where players get to put a cause on their cleat, and then those cleats get auctioned off, and um, the money goes to charity. And there's another week for breast cancer. I mean, the NFL raises loads and loads of money for different causes. So they do all kinds of these specials. They work with the media for all the kinds of these specials on Parkinson's and all different kinds of things. They're leading the research and some of the mental health issues. So this is just extremely ridiculous. But on to an update on the We the People Will Fund the Wall GoFundMe, the Trump Wall. It's called, so GoFundMe.com/the Trump Wall /. Um, it's now up to over 14.5 million and around 240,000 donors. Yesterday it was under 12 and a half, so it was around $12 million last year or yesterday, and so it's grown $2.5 million already today, and 40,000 donors it grew about in the last 24 hours, and you could see it still flowing pretty well. I mean, the lowest donation here is $40. The highest one is $100. Those are pretty hefty donations, and everyone was within a minute ago. Let me refresh because this is when I started recording. So 14666. Oh, the devil. But just now. So two $100 donations, couple $20 donations. So you could see it's, I mean, around $50 a donation. So, and we're over the 240,000 donors. This is cruising. I wonder if it's going to hit some sort of point, almost up to 1 million shares now. So if you go here, if you don't want to give money, at least like it and give it an extra share. Almost 250,000 likes. Let's see if we can get it up there, and let's see if we can get it over 1 million shares. Would be pretty cool. All right, have a good one, guys.